Sobel and Jenny Seydel will provide you with ideas and strategies for using the local community and environmental issues to teach science and social studies and improve reading, writing, and math skills. Again, I'm kind of reading from the screen, but in case you didn't have a chance to read this ahead of time, David Sobel is senior faculty in the Education Department at Antioch University, New England in Keene, New Hampshire. He consults and speaks widely on child development and place-based education with schools, environmental organizations, and the National Park Service. He's authored 7 books and more than 60 articles. One of those books I placed a reading from chapter 1 and 3 on the wiki page just below their picture here. You can see it here. That's from his book, Childhood and Nature, Design Principles for Educators, published by Stenhouse in 2008. Our other speaker is Jenny Seydel. She brings 30 years of experience as an educator to her role as school designer for Expeditionary Learning, a nonprofit education reform organization that partners with schools to prepare children and youth for success in an ever-changing world. Prior to her work with Expeditionary Learning, Jenny was an associate professor of education at Springfield College in Springfield, Massachusetts. So without further ado, I'm going to move to my first question. Before I do that, I'm going to unmute David, who's going to be our first speaker, and then David will speak for a little bit on this question. We sent out these questions to all of you so you could kind of have a feel for what they're going to be talking about ahead of time. And if you can just give me a moment, I'm going to unmute David and Jenny. I have to sort through this list to find them. Okay. Wait.
Do we start?
Just a second, David. I have to sort through this list of 49 people to find your name and Jenny's name, so it's a little. I'm just looking for Jenny here, and I'm just going to leave you both open, your mics open for the duration. So we have several more people joining our webinar this year than last year. Last year I really didn't have this problem because the list was not that large to sort through. And it does not.
Steve, I just unmuted myself.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. Okay. So I didn't realize people can do that. So when we're asking questions, then we're going to have people typing in questions in the chat window. And Claire is going to pick some of those questions, and we'll ask you to unmute yourself, and you can ask the question. So the first thing that we would like to discuss is questions about childhood development, and that's David's area of expertise. So obviously Jenny and David both have extensive experience in that area. So David, can you share some examples of developmentally appropriate outdoor learning experiences as they relate to learning progressions for children? And along with that question, how might the structure and content of outdoor learning experiences change between elementary, middle, and high school students? And David, I'm going to pass the screen over to you as well.
Okay. Is my screen okay? Yes. Show my screen. What are you seeing now, Steve?
I see the PowerPoint. It's not opened into a slideshow yet.
Okay.
There.
How about now?
That's good. Now it's a slideshow.
Okay. So I'm going to take a kind of a slightly broad conceptual approach to this question and try and do something compact in 6 minutes and get to an example. I want to portray some research that I did in map making with children. Gives a picture of what kids' relationship to the natural world and the surrounding world is like, and then that can be the basis for thinking about curriculum. So in the beginning it's going to be more images of kids' maps, and then I'll get to a curriculum example. So I'm going to, this is research that I did with kids in Devon, England.
Welcome to GoTo. There are 47 other callers on the call.
Area around your house, and I mostly wanted to include places that are special or important to you. And when kids said, well, what's a map? I said, it's a picture that shows how things are arranged in your, around where you live. So the first map is of this child's home. Hold on for a second. I just lost my... Here we go. I think I have to back up now. Okay, so that's the first image. Steve, is it a picture, kind of a scribbly looking picture?
Yep. It is.
Yeah, okay. So this is the map of this first little girl that we saw before. Let me go back to that little girl. So that's the little girl. This is the map of her neighborhood. You'll see that it's just a kind of a scribbly picture of her house, and she's standing in front of her house. And this is what maps of 5-year-olds look like. They're very constrained and very small areas, and they're much more like pictures than maps. They look like that. 2 kids standing next to their house. That's a neighborhood map for a 5 or 6-year-old. As kids get a little bit older, there starts to be a foreground and a background. In this picture, there's the house in the foreground and apple trees in the background. The house is still central, but there's a little bit more of a sense of landscape. By the time kids are 6 or 7, you start to get 3 baselines. There's a foreground and a midground, and then the background where the last house is. And so the world has started to stretch out a little bit, and the child's house isn't completely central anymore, and there's a little bit of perspective as if the child has risen up off of the ground and into the air a little bit to start looking at the landscape. By 8 or 9, the maps change kind of substantially. And so the house that used to be central is now at the top of the page. And what's really most important for this child is this explorable landscape that's in the middle of the page. And you'll see, if you look closely, it says on there, treehouse, lookout tree, my secret den. So what's really interesting to this child is this explorable little world, and it's very small. It's only about 50 meters by 75 meters. And so the home has become less important, and the landscape and the natural world or the neighborhood has become more important. The other thing that's in this map is on the left-hand side of the page is a pig farm. Now the next child's map lives in this same group of houses at the top of the pages. The 2 children were not friends. They didn't look at each other's maps when they were drawing them. But you'll see this map is almost exactly the same as the previous one. Row of houses at the top, the explorable landscape in the middle, and the pig farm over to the left. And the explorable landscape has little trails marked out, and it says me and my friend's den and my den. And so the nearby neighborhood has become the significant world for the child. Now what's also interesting about these maps is that they're drawn from a panoramic view perspective. The child has risen up out of the landscape and is looking down at a 45-degree angle view at the world. This is illustrated in this next one too. Now this next map is interesting because the first map of that child that looked kind of scribbly, she lived in this neighborhood too. She lived in one of these houses. So this is a contrast of a 9-year-old view of the neighborhood versus the 5-year-old view of the neighborhood. The 5-year-old view is just the yard and the near to the house world, and the 9-year-old's view is up and out of the landscape looking down at it from a 45-degree angle perspective. So in this map, the child's own home is hard to see at all, so the home is becoming less significant. As kids get up to about 11, they've risen almost completely up to an aerial view except for the homes. So the homes are kind of folded down, but this is a very accurate aerial view of roads and meadows and how the buildings are arranged in the community. And this is a much larger space than in the 9-year-old view or the 5-year-old view. And then finally, by about 13, you get to a pure aerial view of the landscape that looks like a real map. And this child's home is no longer a significant part. It's the distance from one side of the map to the other side of the map is probably 3 or 4 miles. When I asked this child where his special place was, he said, well, if you'd asked me about a year or two ago, it would have been in that little stream over on the left-hand side of the page. That's a conservation area with lots of woods. But he said, now my special place is in the shops in Newton Abbot. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little set of boxes that it says shops inside of it. And so the social world has become significant for this child. So there's a developmental progression from being at one with the natural world to being separate and standing back from the natural world and taking a kind of objective cognitive view of it by 13. And so curriculum ought to follow this progression of kids from embedded to exploring to being able to step back and objectify the world. So I'm looking at a diagram of Peirce's matrices of human development. This is a nice model of stages of development that really is good for conceptualizing what we should be trying to accomplish. And essentially, Peirce says you start out, young kids are in the mother and family matrix. It's up through about 7 years old, and the world should be kind of small and close to home. And then kids move into the earth and physical world between about 7 and 14. And the context, the safe place, the thing that they want to know about should be the earth and the nearby surrounding world. And then at about 14, you move into the self and society matrix. And that's where the self is born and adolescence comes to bear, and you should become a responsible member of the larger society. So if you translate that into a curriculum model, and this is from a book I did called Map Making with Children, this is kind of Russian nesting dolls models of what the curriculum ought to be about. So home and school, you can see down there at the center. That's what the 5- and 6-year-old curriculum should be about. The 7- and 8-year-old curriculum should be about the neighborhood. The 9- and 10-year-old curriculum should be about the community and the watershed. 12 and beyond, middle school into high school should be about the nation, the region, the nation, and then beyond. And that's not in all aspects of the curriculum, but there should be some aspect that roots the child to these different spheres of engagement. Another way to look at this is to translate these stages of development into goals for environmental education or social studies or science education that the 4- to 7-year-olds should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the development of empathy. For 7 to 11-year-olds, we should be focusing on exploring the physical world, and that includes the social world. And then from 11 to 14 is when we should really be moving into the social action realm. And then 14 to 17, we should really be providing some kinds of initiation experience for kids that involves being out in the broader world. So if we really followed that kind of model, let me give you one for instance of curriculum. We should be able to move through this pretty quickly. So here's a wonderful little project done with 8 to 10-year-old kids in a English school. And the teacher here is actually a British landscape painter, and he's working to develop a map of the neighborhood that involves 8 to 10-year-olds working on different parts of the map. And this little area is a crossroads. It's about a 2-minute walk from the school, and this whole process involves a lot of integrated literacy and math and social studies. So he tells the children, we're going on a walk, we're walking out this lane. I want you to take notes about how things sound as you walk out this lane. So the children are walking notes about all the sounds that they hear, and they can't say anything. So Here's one girl's image, or one girl's notes. It says, bees buzzing, wind blowing, airplane throbbing, cows talking, arguing, mooing very loud, sore throats, water rippling very gently, whispering, telling secrets. So they did that, go in one direction, and then going the other direction, he said, well, on the way back, I want you to collect colors from the landscape so that when we create a map of this place, we're going to use the real stuff from the landscape. So he said if we're going to show this lane, this muddy lane on the map, we're going to collect some mud and we're going to paint the mud onto the map to show that this came from this muddy lane. And then he showed the kids how you can take flowers or leaves and rub them on the paper and get the pigment on the paper. So yellow alien on a green plant, that's a dandelion flower rubbed onto the page. And I'm not sure what the green button is. We also picked cabbage leaves and rubbed the cabbage leaves on the pages. So then back in the classroom, he started to assemble all these different experiences into a large kind of visually and literally interesting map. And one of the things he did was there was a public footpath in this area that they were mapping, and so they got mud from the footpath and put one of the kids' feet into the mud and then printed a footprint on the map to show the location of the public footpath. And then this is what the map looked like towards the end. The center place is where we started the map. Going straight up towards the top of the picture is Xeroxes of leaves that were collected from the hedges on both sides of the path. Just up slightly off to the left of center is a little map of Australia because there was a woodworker's shop there and he sent his products that he made to Australia. And then going to the left is a sound poem, a series of words all along that little stream that they walked along. A sound poem and if you read that poem, you would sequentially get a sense of what you would hear if you walked along that lane. So as you can see, some nice literacy pieces, some nice social studies pieces of how we connected to the wider world, great ways of exploring local places. The spiral that's there is a pit mine that was located nearby. So it led to an understanding of the geography and social structure of the place. And that's all I've got for this part, Steve.
Okay, David. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. We had a problem earlier when you were just beginning where my audio had been shut off for a second. So we have several great questions coming in. Dottie Painter, if you want to try, you can click on the unmute button. I'll give you, you asked, were these students all asked, where is your special place outside? Or was there a school outdoor program in place?
I think she's referring to the slides of the kids' maps. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so yes, the children were all asked as part of that task to identify where their special places were. That was part of my initial instructions with the kids. And so I was, that's a kind of a whole nother little angle of interest of mine, is looking at kids' special places and how they evolve across, from early childhood into adolescence. So yes, they were asked about that, and some of them shared them and some of them didn't, but most of them knew what I was talking about when I asked them about a special place.
Okay. And Dottie was also wondering if she could get a copy of your PowerPoint to show at her school.
We have to, you and I need to talk about that, Steve, because yeah. I'm always hesitant to show this stuff without my narration.
Yes.
Because it's hard to, it's hard to actually explain it without the context of it.
Sure. So we'll come up with other ways, though, Dottie. We can follow up with you about how to convey some of these ideas. And
Steve, a lot of what I just described, and with examples of those maps, is in the Map Making with Children book. I'm going to kind of talks about these different stages of development in map making and how that, and then the rest of the book is lots and lots and lots of curricular examples that are in alignment with the different stages in terms of kids' geographic understanding.
Okay.
I think David, that your Children in Nature book as well is an amazing resource for understanding age-appropriate activities, outdoor learning experiences as well. So I think I would encourage people to read that book of David's as well. Each chapter talks about a different developmental stage. It's really very, very good.
Actually, not quite. I think you're conflating two different books there, Jenny.
Am I? Which two books?
Because the Childhood in Nature book is good examples of curriculum, but it's not organized developmentally so much. It's more organized by design principles. The other book
Okay.
that's organized developmentally, the two books that are organized developmentally are the Map Making with Children book, and then the Wild Nature, Wild Play book.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, and David, we have some other questions here. Julie Croston would like to hear you explain a little bit more about the concept of explorable landscape.
Yeah, I've done, so the same challenge that I've done with kids, I've done with lots and lots of adults. And for the most part, if people have grown up in the last 30 or 40 years with access to an outdoor space, whether it be urban or rural, in other words, they don't live in war zones, or they don't live in places that are really, really dangerous, and their parents let them have some access to the outdoor world. Kids move into the yard, and then into the neighbors' yards, and into the backyard, and then to the nearby woods, or if it's in an urban area, to their block, and to the park down at the end of the block, and then to the candy store. There's a very clear progression of movement out into the world. And that's becoming less and less possible, but the underpinnings are that it's a desire for all kids to do this. And so my contention is that it's important for educators, whether they be classroom teachers or environmental educators or summer camp educators, to give kids the opportunity to put the world together, to figure out how the pieces fit together. And that means that you have to go out and explore somewhat of your own volition.
Okay, so I'm looking for questions by theme, but we're jumping around a little bit just by the nature of what's coming in, David. We have another question here. How would something like this be used at the high school level using a global approach?
Let me give you at least a middle school example, rather than, but it could be used at the high school level. It just happened to be done at the middle school. And then Jenny's going to give a lot of examples of urban experiences, and I think some of those are going to be high school oriented ones. Is that right, Jenny?
Yeah, I've got some.
A great example of a place-based approach using the local landscape to teach the curriculum. A teacher in Guilford, Vermont, a middle school social studies teacher who has to teach Greek culture, ancient Greece. And as she's sitting in the beginning of the school year opening program for all the teachers in the district, they're meeting in the local movie theater in Brattleboro, Vermont, and it was built by a Greek immigrant, and it's essentially a museum of Greek heritage and culture. So the ceiling is painted with illustrations of all the Greek gods, and there's friezes and sculpture and all kinds of Greek cultural artifacts. So what the curriculum for studying Greece becomes is creating a brochure for the arts organization that loves the theater to interpret all the Greek cultural elements of that are represented in the movie theater. So the students actually work together to create a brochure that now is a regular part of the art organization's interpretive information for the community. And in the process of looking very closely at a community resource, a movie theater was right in their town, they were able to use that as a doorway or as an entree into looking at ancient cultures. So the so the local community, by exploring the local community, which includes both the landscape and then as kids get older, the social institutions in the community, they can become a vehicles. So a lot of high school teachers use, in teaching World War history, use the senior citizens in your community that are veterans to explain and give access to an understanding of what it was like for the United States to be involved in the Second World War.
Excellent. Well, thank you for those insights, David. We're getting a lot of positive feedback about how people are thinking about incorporating these specific examples and then kind of a theoretical framework about childhood development that you've laid out for us. In the interest of time, I'd like to move on to our next question. We'll hold some of these questions and try and follow up. We have a quick question. Could you please repeat quickly the name of the map book?
It's called Map Making with Children.
Okay. And we'll put up some of those resources on the wiki page as well. So I'm going to move on. Thank you, David. And we'll come back as time allows. We'll definitely have time for the next question, and we'll see how the rest that we have on this question list will fit in. Jenny, I'm going to hand the screen over to you. And luckily this time your name is right here at the top.
Great.
And then yep, it's on now. You just need to open up the PowerPoint. I'll state the question here. The question is, I think earlier iterations of environmental education implied, whether intentionally or not, that environmental education can only happen in wide open spaces in rural or maybe suburban communities. I think what Earth Partnership tries to do, and we'd like to hear Jenny with your work as well, is to get across the idea that environmental education can take place in the middle of some of the most crowded parts of our largest cities by finding what David would call special places. So Jenny, our question for you is, what are some examples you have seen of teachers specifically in urban settings creatively incorporating the outdoors into their teaching? And I'll mute.
Great. So one of the things that I work the full span, kindergarten through 12th grade, and supporting teachers in designing curriculum. And what we do is we really use local topics related to organisms, ecology, environmental justice, and issues of equity to make standards come to life in a classroom. So I work with all public school and public charter schools around the country, and expeditionary learning, that's the work that we do. So everything that we do has to be embedded in content or Common Core standards. The natural world, the outdoor world, and these issues and topics that are developmentally appropriate it doesn't matter where you live. Your opportunities for outdoor learning exist wherever you are. And I'm having a problem. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we do is look at the curriculum and study the curriculum and think about the cognitive stage of development of the students and what's available in the neighborhood around the school, and connect it to the curriculum standards and come up with very strong curriculum. In expeditionary learning, we call them expeditions, and they are either content specific or fully integrated. So again, whether you're in rural, suburban, or urban settings, if it's healthy to get kids outside of the classroom and bring the outside of the classroom in, which is what we always talk about. So in an urban classroom, which this book, What Snake Am I, is a urban charter school in Boston, the field work and the experiences that the students had in second grade students in learning about snakes included experts coming into the classroom, and I know I see a number of wonderful informal educators on this webinar, as well as great classroom teachers. So those partnerships between our environmental educators that are outside of the school structure are absolutely critical in urban education to bring these concepts to life with students. So the curriculum design that we talk about, the elements that we use to bring the outside into the classroom are features of a child's life that they are connected to. So on the left side of the screen here, you see a fifth grade classroom. This is more of a rural environment, but we've done drinking water studies with high school students collecting water samples from multiple places in their communities and analyzing that water for quality. Recycling is a critical issue wherever you exist, and trash collection is critical wherever you live. So going just around the classroom, or excuse me, around the school, and looking at what is left behind when people move around the world or around their neighborhood is critical. We also, in our schools, identify projects that are authentic to their community. This particular project on this screen is a ninth grade energy audit of their school, but multiple schools, with a presentation to the school board about energy conservation. So the students did their work. These are students on field work. They're moving around their community. They might not be exploring the creeks at this point in time, but developmentally for ninth graders in this particular situation, going out and examining schools and collecting data on energy was an absolutely critical piece in an expedition related to climate change. The other piece that is the environment is critical. Everybody is connected to the environment, whether it be through health issues of obesity and asthma, to examining where they can buy local fresh food, mapping their communities for food deserts. Those are all ways that we connect middle and high school students to what's happening in their world. It's identifying the issues, knowing the standards, identifying the issues, and then creating that need to know. And then we get students out into the field so they have some sort of an emotional connection to the topic that we're teaching. And you'll see that in so many of my slides, it's all about what's on the clipboard. So this particular this is a middle school project where we've done a watershed study in an urban neighborhood, and you can see that we have a whole sequence of maps. So we're learning about scale. We're actually, this particular group, even in their urban community, did a field guide of organisms that live in their local river. And we did a study of the geology. So this might not look like an urban area, but this is the park where the students actually put up their signs. Those posters that we just looked at were actually created as, what do we call them? Somebody out there that's working in parks, a display sign, and so they created weatherized display boards. So people going to this park were able to learn about the river. Up in the upper portion here, you see the mural on the water pump area at the park. Actually, that's the outhouse. That mural was also done by the students And so they take ownership. Water is an issue, whether it's looking at water quality, like we looked at when we were collecting samples in restaurants and bathrooms and drinking fountains in the schools, to water quality in watersheds. And then we look at water quality at the upper levels, the water scarcity issues that we've got around the country or around the globe right now. So going from local to global is a critical place of curriculum design and development, where environmental topics are absolutely critical. You can see that water is something that ties us all together. This particular book is a literacy-based book written about the San Diego Bay by high-tech high students. It's a phenomenal both history and natural history of the San Diego Bay. The chapters show this is all written by students. It's an amazing professional quality book. And the chapters, you can see there's history. So this is an interdisciplinary project done, with multiple team of teachers in all content areas. You can see that we've hit on history, a little bit of recreation and waterfowl hunting, and then all of the natural history, different features of the San Diego Bay, and bringing it back to having it be much more of a living system. Many of our schools, urban schools, focus on plants and organisms in science, and create and use art to create these amazing field handbooks that can be used by park systems in their communities. So there are so many different ways. This is a 6th grade in Rochester that took on a project where they designed, they felt that restoring their waterway, again, we have these water seems to be the thing that drives a lot of curriculum and keeps people connected with their place. And this particular project, the students looked at other communities that restored the rivers that ran through the center of urban areas, and they made a proposal of how they might restore the waterway at Rochester. It included surveys of people in the community. They went out, they collected data, and they developed a presentation. This actually was a curriculum that was used for multiple 6th grade classrooms, and eventually the students worked with the community. This was a foundation project. It's been federally funded. They actually also worked on a plan to restore one of the round blocks and get water back into the a vacant aqueduct in the city. Another common way of engaging urban students is gardening. And so issues and topics related to food are absolutely critical. So we kind of have health, water, and food that are significant urban issues. This is actually in Shanghai. So when we talk about an urban community, this is a training actually with teachers in a rooftop garden. And I had 50 teachers, I think, in this workshop, and only 4 of them had ever grown a plant. So this particular workshop with teachers, so one of the things, those of you that are not in classrooms or in schools with teachers who don't have a lot of experience doing outdoor field work or curriculum that is really connected with the real world, it's important for you to have experiences together as a team. This team of teachers now has their own rooftop garden at a school, and the students are growing vegetables and greens and herbs and learning how to cook and use them in just amazing ways. So you can see from just in a matter of from April of last year, where the teachers had their first experience to, bringing this to life with the students in a, in an amazingly high powered urban community where fresh fruits and vegetables and fresh produce is limited. So those are, so the curriculum design piece, I think, is important. But the other piece that I wanted to share with you is this is an open access tool. Oops, I sent you a link to this. David was talking, and I thought of Ann Forbes' work with phonology wheels. But I want to take you out to this website, and you can access this. All of you can access this from your home. elschools.org. This is one of the.
We'll put that up. We'll put that up on the Earth Partnership website on the wiki page.
Great, great. So this is one of the largest collections of digital student work in the country. And if you wanted, I mean, just looking here, these are projects and curriculum projects that you can read about. This is pre-K. You can use this slider. And whatever grade you're on, these are all projects, not just in expeditionary learning schools, but in schools around the country. You can see age-appropriate topics embedded in curriculum and content standards across the country, things that are being done by students and teachers to bring the outside in and the inside out. And even when we slide all the way up here to 12th grade, our high school, you can see that we're really building our high school collection. If we slide down, you can see, again, very age-appropriate content topics, some including the natural world, others, really connected with health issues, water issues. But these are this is how we build curriculum, again, bringing the outside in and taking the students on the outside to explore their urban communities in ways that bring relevance to what we're teaching. So
great,
you
thanks.
can slide around. I mean, this is one of my favorite websites.
Excellent. Well, thank Jenny. We have a lot of great questions coming in. So can I throw some of those your way?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a pair of questions that you kind of addressed after they came in, but I think it's worth expanding on what you mentioned with that group in Shanghai where you had teachers who had never grown plants before.
Yeah.
I find that astounding. So we have one teacher, Julie Croston, that mentioned she was wondering about an example of igniting or creating the need to know. It's the initial hook that seems the hardest. And then Matt followed up saying, I was curious if there were suggestions for introducing and engaging 13 and 14-year-old students who have not had much exploring experience in that 7 to 11 age range and sometimes seem apathetic.
Sure. So one of the things that is critical and difficult to do is you have to think about the children, and you can interview the students. This particular expedition that I've got up in front of me, the Peacekeepers of Chicago, these students live in a neighborhood where you can't go outside. So whether these middle school kids could create maps or not, I think they might be included in this book. Now these are just the people, but these students created maps, but the maps were of the gun violence in their neighborhood. And every single child in this class of 100 students had lost somebody in their family to gun violence. So when we think about education for sustainability, when we move outside of just thinking about ecological and environmental topics, when we really look at education for sustainability, the issues of equity and economics and justice and peace, all of those things are tied together. And in an urban child's life, the issues of protecting the natural world are not as essential as the issues of understanding violence and how to reduce violence in their communities. So, and looking at the Constitution. So, so once we are able to hook them into a justice issue, a civil rights issue like this, it's very easy then in middle and high school to translate the injustice to other organisms and other species, but they have to understand the concepts of justice as well. So in this particular school, I don't have the expeditions, but we've talked about, we've moved from building this piece around justice and the U.S. Constitution and the Second Amendment. We've used then the United Nations pieces related to, I'm having a block to the main document that we use, but the United Nations documents about Earth from, David, can you help me? Do you know what the name of the, there are a number of documents that have come out of major meetings in Europe and around the world related to equity. And so
I'm thinking of the Tbilisi meeting that happened in the late 70s.
Yeah,
maybe?
yep. And so there are a number of things that you can then, you start local. You build around an issue that's local, and then you build out into global, but without placing something and developing passion around a local issue, it's very difficult to get them motivated about, other species and other organisms, because those emotions and the belief that they can do something to impact their community are such, especially in some of our urban, poor urban communities, they don't believe they can impact things. So you have to create something where they can see that they can impact. This particular expedition was one that just jumped into mind when I was thinking of that.
Jenny, I think that we are actually getting close to our time. So we have to make a little bit of a decision with you and David. I know in past work we get an awful lot of questions from teachers about standardized tests and incorporating outdoor learning, not letting that go by the wayside in an era where there's a lot of pressure to keep kids inside. David, do you feel, can you give a kind of an abbreviated portion of what you were going to share on that topic?
I'll show 3 slides.
Okay, so I'll transition. So Jenny, I'd like to thank you. I apologize, we have to cut out. We have some good questions that I'll follow up with you, Jenny, and perhaps post a Word document or think of somehow where we could continue the conversation.
Sure. I can talk about some of the data related to standardized testing as well. If we have a couple of minutes, I can show some graphs and charts that are pretty astounding.
So Steve, why don't we let Jenny, because her expeditionary learning stuff is really good. So if you've got that stuff right there, Jenny, why don't you go ahead and start with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So one of the things that is absolutely everything that expeditionary learning does is, oops, that's the wrong piece, is connected. Our bread and butter is standardized tests. One of our design principles is the natural world. So everything that we do is preparing students to be citizen scholars. And because our roots are in Outward Bound, how do I say this? You will find that every grade in every expeditionary learning school is doing some topic related to the outdoors, the natural world, the environment. And so when you look at the data, we have 165 schools across the country. We work with over 45,000 students. When you look at the data from these particular schools, you can see that with fidelity, when our teachers are really using compelling topics that are based mainly in environmental topics and social justice topics, I would say, sustainability topics, we are closing the achievement gap on standardized tests. And you can look at these data. You can see that, we have a whole solid base of data that shows that, let me get that right. So we are in our schools, our district schools at the elementary level in reading and English language arts across the country, we're 7 points higher. In middle school, we're 11 points higher. And in high school, we're 12 points higher on standardized tests. You can see that with different populations of students based on socioeconomic need, race, special education, we are also closing the achievement gap in our schools.
Jenny.
And that is because we're tied to issues in the community, not just a textbook.
So I'd like to add, I think you've made it clear, but just to reiterate that it's an approach. It's not most of the teachers here may not have heard of expeditionary learning schools before tonight's webinar, but I think you've laid out that you don't have to be an expeditionary learning school.
Nope.
To do these approaches and get some of the achievement, and at the same time have some of these achievement gains that you're talking about.
Right, absolutely. I think that it's, there are schools, in fact, some of the projects that, many of the projects that we have on our website, it's probably a 50-50 now, are not expeditionary learning schools. So I think that it's about best practices, it's about finding compelling topics and place-based topics that are relevant to the students, to the teachers, to their communities, and designing projects that empower the students. And that combination of things is, is not owned by expeditionary learning. It's best practice in education.
Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you, Jenny. Claire, I'm just checking with Claire next to me. We have one question. Are those data available online? And I will say that you're drawing from the website, correct?
Yeah, this is on the
So you can find that. Julie was wondering about that. You can find that on the Expeditionary Learning website. I'll put that up on our wiki page. And another question, have you thought about how to include engineering education? The new next generation science standards, I'm talking about science, but I think you could connect that with social studies as well and other subjects in math. Have you thought about how to include engineering education within this approach?
Absolutely. I'm actually in Indianapolis right now with 50 teachers doing a Designing Learning Expedition Institute, and spent my afternoon with our science and math teachers identifying and defining case studies with projects that are have more of a physical component and design component to it than a literacy component. All of our work has a literacy component because of those really critical skills. We're embedded in the Common Core, but the Next Generation Science Standards has opened a great opportunity for us. One of my schools is in the process of designing a makerspace with a 3D printer and all sorts of wonderful tools for the design elements. And we also, I'm working with a new school that will be opening soon that has that's designed around a makerspace concept. So the design and the engineering pieces are absolutely critical.
Excellent. Well, Jenny, we're right up. I'd rather end a minute early than a few minutes late. So it's about 5:29 Central Time, 6:29 Eastern, and I know people have other things to attend to. So I'd like to really thank you and David for a wonderful opening webinar presentation. We had 55 people from Milwaukee, Cleveland, Detroit, Muskegon. I'm missing one of the cities. I'm blanking out. Apologies. Chicago. Sorry, Chicago. Our neighbor to the south here.
New Jersey.
I'd love to have some from New Jersey too. I taught there before. So thank you for your presentations, and thank all of our listeners. I hope you got some ideas to take home with you. Jenny, we didn't have time to get to your practical tips, although I think those came up at times throughout the presentation. But again, if there are ways we could share that in other methods besides your presentation, I'll talk with you about doing that.
Great, great. And my slides are pretty basic. I mean, there's no real meat to them. There's no text to them. They're just pictures. So if people want the pictures, they can have them, and the links to the websites are,
great. Yeah, if you can just send that file to me, I may already have it, and I'll post that on the website or on the wiki
okay,
page.
great. Great.
All right, and David, thank you as well.
My pleasure.
It's always a blast to work with you, David. Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to sign off from Madison here. And for all of the participants, I look forward to having you join us on Thursday, February 20th. Please, if there are any aspects of the course, it's difficult to manage a course that's spread out with 50 people in 5 cities, so I know the wiki page in some spots could be a little clearer, but we need the help of our local coordinators, and you need to call us, participants, if you have any questions that come up.
Can I make a plug for the Green Schools National Conference?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Anybody interested, come on out to the Green Schools National Conference I have my website up here, in Sacramento, March 27th through the 29th. You can head out onto our website and see what's going on. We have just released the new brochure with all of our keynote speakers and excursions and the list of workshops and solution summits. And I see people who are logging in saying, yes, they'll be there. And Carolyn, I see Carolyn posted on there. I'm excited that you were on this website. Carolyn's been working with us on the conference plan. So come on out to California.
Thanks for the plug. And we just had a chat question come in that I appreciate the person asking. There will be a discussion thread question at the bottom of the wiki page for this webinar that I'll be posting later tonight. And we do ask all participants as part of getting credit, if you're taking the course for credit, to participate in those discussion threads. It's on the wiki page. There's the chat window that happens during the webinar. Someone was confused on this. And then after the webinar, we have discussion threads that are on the wiki page. So I'll be sending out a reminder for you to participate in that. All right, I'm going to sign off then. Thanks again, David and Jenny, and everyone who joined us from around the Great Lakes area. Take care and stay warm.